Good morning, boys and girls. I'm Eleanor Hawkins, and welcome to Telestory Time. We're having a special show today. Yes, we're actually celebrating Read Across America in honor of Dr. Seuss's 114th birthday. And today we have the Grinch here as our special guest, as you can see. Millions of children all over the United States are celebrating Read Across America during this month of March. And here is a poem that I'd like you to hear. You're never too old, too wacky, too wild to pick up a book and with a child. You're never too busy, cool, or too hot to pick up a book and share what you've got. In schools and communities, let's gather around, let's pick up a book, let's pass it around. There are kids around you, kids who will need someone to hug and someone to read. And this is the month of March celebrating Read Across America. And now, boys and girls, I want to read our very first story. And the one I've chosen is entitled, The Rabbits Give a Party. Flippity, Floppity, and Flip Flop were three merry little rabbits. Every day they would run and play in the fields not far from their home. They played hide and seek among the bushes and trees. They hopped and tumbled over each other in the green grass. They played catch. They chased butterflies whenever one fluttered by. When they were tired, they hurried home to have their faces and ears washed by Mrs. Rabbit. One morning, Mrs. Rabbit made a happy announcement. Children, she said, since all of you have been very good bunnies this week, I have a surprise for you. We are going to have a party. The three little rabbit ears went up. A party, they cried happily. Mrs. Rabbit smiled. Flippity and Floppity, you may deliver the invitations. They have already been made out. Flip-Flop, you stay and help me at home. With two shakes of their little cotton tails, Flippity and Floppity each took half of the invitations and set forth. Now, Flippity's first stop was at a large oak tree. The little rabbit rapped on the trunk. Oliver Owl's two big round eyes blinked sleepily from an opening in the tree overhead. Here's an invitation for you, said Flippity, reaching upward. And there's one for Sally Squirrel, too. Will you see that she gets it? And thank you. And he hopped away. Floppity, meanwhile, went down to the meadow. Near a clear brook, they bubbled along over some rocks. On the way to the river, the rabbit found a small hole in the ground. He waited patiently. Soon a tiny furry animal popped out of it, and it was Martin Meadow Mouse. Hi, Martin, said Floppity cheerfully. Guess what I've got for you? Well, I can't imagine, answered the mouse. Well, it's an invitation to a party. See? And Floppity waved the paper excitingly in front of the mouse's whiskers. Oh, how nice, said Martin. I'll certainly try to be there. And he scurried away. On and on the two rabbits went, delivering party invitations to all their animal friends. Mrs. Mole's invitation was left on the molehill, since she was nowhere in sight when Flippity hurried by. Percy Porcupine's invitation stuck on his quills, so that he would be sure and not lose it. The last invitation of all was given to Phoebe Fawn, though she really should have been the very first to get one. Phoebe, a beautiful deer with light brown coat and dark brown eyes, was looked upon by the animals of the field and forest as their princess. Now, with their errand finished, Flippity and Floppity scampered across the fields back to their house. At last the day of the party arrived. The sun shone brightly. Oh, it was a beautiful spring day. Mrs. Rabbit spread a large white tablecloth on the grass. On it she put nut cakes, cheese tarts, honey, jam, mushroom, carrots, and milk. There was something there for every animal invited to the party, and it made one hungry just to look at it. Oliver Owl and Sally Squirrel were the very first guests to arrive. Sally carried an umbrella with her because she had heard it might rain, and she did hate to get wet. Oliver wore a green tie with matching sunglasses. His eyes were not used to the bright daylight. Phoebe Fawn walked up with a quiet, graceful step. "It was a great honor to have you at our party, Your Royal Highness," said Mr. Rabbit, bowing low. More and more guests arrived every minute. Mrs. Rabbit greeted Percy Porcupine, who was wearing a handsome green coat. Right behind Percy came Mrs. Mole, wearing a new pink hat. Martin Meadowmouse was hungry. He could hardly wait to nibble at the cheese tarts that looked so delicious. At last everyone was there, and the party began. Flippity served some small cakes to Oliver Owl, who was sipping lemonade out of a straw. Floppity passed some raspberry jam to Percy Porcupine. Oh, it was Percy's favorite dish. And Flip Flop was thoughtful enough to prepare and serve a special salad of clover for Princess Phoebe Fawn. Suddenly, a loud screeching sound was heard. It was Martha Magpie scolding all the animals, especially the rabbits, because she had not been invited to the party. "Shh," said Oliver Owl, ruffling his feathers. "Shh," said all the rabbits. "Please be quiet." But it was too late. The loud cries of Martha Magpie had brought an unwelcome visitor to the party. It was Wally the wild pig. Wally had no manners at all. He merely grunted very loudly. Mrs. Rabbit was worried. "Oh, I'm afraid that wild pig will break my good dishes," she groaned. And she was right. Wally trampled here and there and made sure that he put a foot in every dish. He broke a good many of them too. Then Mr. Rabbit hopped over. He knew just what to do. He gave Wally a jar of honey. Wally pushed his snout greedily into the jar, and the jar was stuck on his snout. He pushed and pulled and twisted the jar, but it was no use. The jar would not come off. And so Wally ran away angrily with the jar still on his snout and a trickle of honey running down the side of his face. No sooner had Wally left, however, than another unwelcome visitor arrived. It was Red Fox, and he was hungry. Fortunately for the animals, he made straight for the cookies, but they all wondered just what would happen afterward. While Red Fox was gulping down the cookies, Martin Meadowmouse had an idea. Quickly, he picked up the pepper shaker and shook it right under Red Fox's nose. And guess what happened? Kerchoo, kerchoo, sneezed Red Fox, and away he ran with tears running down his face. Now everyone felt better, and the party began. The animals played games, sang gay songs, ate and drank until they could hold no more. And when it was time to go home, all agreed that it was one of the best parties ever given in the forest. And that, boys and girls, is the story. The rabbits give a party. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment to read from our big Do You Know book. Stay tuned. Boys and girls, our Do You Know this morning is longer than usual because we are celebrating Read Across America in honor of Dr. Seuss. And I received this information from Wikipedia, and so I'm going to read it now. Do you know Dr. Seuss was born on March the 2nd, 1904, in Springfield, Massachusetts, and he died on September the 24th, 1991. He was at the age of 87. Do you know in 1998, the National Education Association Read Across America, started Read Across America the week of Dr. Seuss's birthday to celebrate reading in his honor. Do you know Dr. Seuss's first book was To Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, actually written in 1937. Do you know it often took Dr. Seuss one whole year to write and illustrate a book? Do you know Dr. Seuss's real name was Theodore Seuss Geisel? His mother's maiden name was Seuss. And later he wrote several books under the pen name of Theo the Zig, Geisel spelled backward. Do you know Dr. Seuss wrote 60 children's books, selling over 600 million copies and being translated into more than 20 languages? Do you know his books have been televised, made into movies, and Broadway musicals? Do you know Life magazine published a report on illiteracy among school children? They were not learning to read because they were bored. Do you know William Spaulding, a director of the Education Division of Houghton Mifflin, compiled a list of 348 words that were important for first grades to recognize, and told Geisel to write a book using 250 of these words. Do you know The Cat in the Hat was written in 9 months, the first of the long series of the beginner books, I Can Read It All by Myself. And that book was, of course, The Cat in the Hat. This was a historical moment in children's books. Do you know Dr. Seuss received many outstanding awards during his life? Do you know during World War II, Theo Geisel joined the Army and drew posters for the war effort, and later became commander of animation and wrote films and winning Academy Awards? Do you know after the war, he returned to writing children's books? He liked to have his name, Seuss, pronounced to rhyme with Mother Goose. Do you know Dr. Seuss introduced children to Sneetches, Grinches, and Ooblex? Do you know he wrote The Cat in the Hat in 1957, a favorite picture book of everyone? Also, he wrote The 500 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins and How the Grinch Stole Christmas, a favorite book and movie today. Do you know one of my very favorite Dr. Seuss books is Bartholomew and the Oobleck, the story of a new and different kind of weather, which was really green sticky molasses falling from the sky. And now, boys and girls, I want to read you a poem. It's all about Dr. Seuss. He wrote The Cat in the Hat and so many other great books. His fans have grown to be astronauts, teachers, dancers, and cooks. He used his wit in rhymes and along the way made millions of giggles and smiles. So get ready every March to laugh, dream, and read to celebrate Dr. Seuss's birth. He's a great author indeed. And now, boys and girls, let me remind you to please visit your public library sometime during this next week any of the libraries in the Craven, Pamlico, Carteret Regional Library System, and check out some very good Dr. Seuss books on your very own library card. And now we'll be back in just a moment with another story just for you. And now, boys and girls, I'm going to read you the story, The Giant Who Wanted Company. Once there was a giant who lived all alone in his big house. At dinner time, there was only one plate on his big table. At night, only one of his big beds was slept in. There was no noise, no commotion. The giant had no one to talk with him, and he had no one to walk with him. He was very lonely. "I'd like some company," the giant said to himself. "I'll go falling near, and I'll invite my friends to come and visit me." So he went far to invite his giant friends. "I'd like some company," the giant said to them. "Could you stop by to see me someday?" "Oh, we'll be glad to come," said his giant friends. "See you soon." Next, the giant went near to invite his smaller friends. He invited horses and cows and dogs and cats, kittens and goats and llamas and bats and ants and doves. "I'd like some company," the giant said to them all. "Could you stop by to see me someday?" "Oh, we'll be glad to come," said his smaller friends. "See you soon." Then the giant went home and got ready for company. He set some plates on his big table. He put clean sheets on his big beds. He filled his big cupboards with food. When everything was ready, the giant sat down to wait for his visitors. He wondered who would come first, giant friends or smaller friends. Soon he heard knocking. Someone was knocking at his big front door. The giant hurried to open it, and he saw all of his giant friends, all of his smaller friends, all the company from far and near had come at once. There was noise in the giant's house then. He had so much company to talk with. The giant shouted, the horses neighed, the cows mooed, the dogs barked, the cats meowed, the kittens mooed, the goats bleated, the llamas made whatever kind of noise llamas make. The bats squeaked, the ants chirred, and the doves cooed. In all that noise, the giant couldn't understand a single word anyone said. There was commotion in the giant's house then. He had so much company to walk with. The giant strode, the horses cantered, the cows plodded, the dogs trotted, the cats prowled, the kittens scampered, the goats ambled. The llamas moved in whatever way llamas move. The bats swooped, the ants scattered, and the doves flew. In all that commotion, the giant didn't dare set a foot down flat for fear of stepping on a friend. The giant had so much company to feed. He seated all his giant friends around a big table. They ate the toast and the roast, the ham and the jam, and everything else from the cupboards too. So he had to bring hay from the stables for the horses. He gathered grass from the pasture for the cows. He found bones from the meat for the dogs. But I've still got so much company left over, said the giant. So the cats looked for scraps. The kittens ate the lickings scraped from the cooking pans. The goats chose oats. The llamas ate whatever llamas eat. The bats searched for this and that. The ant did a sugar bowl dance, and the doves, what could he feed doves? Then the doves, who were always polite, cooed and cooed. Never mind, said the giant, we aren't hungry. But the giant was, and he had to stay hungry, for there was nothing left for him to eat. The giant had so much company to spend the night. The giant friends slept in the giant beds. The horses slept in the chairs. The cows slept on the sofas, and the dogs slept on the footstools. But I still got so much company left over, said the giant. So he put the cats to bed on the mats, the kittens in his mittens, the goats in his coats, and the llamas in his pajamas, the bats in his hats, the ants on his plants, and the doves in his gloves. Then the tired giant tried to sleep leaning against a table leg. Now the next morning all the company woke early. They hadn't slept very well in their strange beds. They were hungry too, but there was nothing for breakfast. They had eaten everything the night before. So all the company, great and small, told the giant they'd had a nice time, but they had to go home now. The giant hurried to open his big front door. Goodbye, goodbye, said the sleepy, hungry giant. Come again sometime, but please, not all at once. I'll tell you when. And that, boys and girls, is the story of the giant who wanted company. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment. And now, boys and girls, I'm going to read this story, Egg Book. Once there was a little bunny. He was all alone. One day he found an egg. He could hear something moving inside the egg. What was it? Maybe a little boy, maybe an elephant, maybe another bunny, or maybe a mouse. Who could tell what he would find? And how would a little bunny know? But there was something inside that egg. He could hear something moving. He shook it. Then the bunny pushed the egg with his foot. He jumped on top of the egg. He climbed a tree and threw nuts at the egg. He rolled the egg down a hill, But still the eggshell didn't break, and whatever was in the egg didn't come out. So the bunny threw a rock at the egg, but because he was only a little bunny, it was a very little rock, and he didn't know, and he didn't throw it very hard, and the egg did not break. Pick, pick, pick. Something was trying to get out of that egg. The bunny sat very still and watched through his shining eyes. He sat very still and listened with his big, soft ears. Pick, pick, pick. Then the little bunny began to yawn, and he yawned and he yawned. The egg was very quiet. He curled up all sleepy and warm, close to the egg, and went to sleep. He went to sleep because he was so sleepy. Then pick, 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 and peck, 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 and crackety-crack, out jumped a little yellow duck. "Well, what is this?" said the duck when he saw the bunny. "What could this little fur thing be?" The bunny was very sleepy, and he was still asleep, and he didn't wake up. "Inside the egg," said the duck, "I thought I was all alone in a small, dark world. And now I find myself alone with the bunny in a big, bright world, and the bunny won't wake up." So the duck pushed the bunny with his foot, and he jumped on him, and he threw a little rock at him, and rolled him down a hill, and the bunny woke up. "Where is my egg?" said the bunny, "and where did you come from?" "Never mind that," said the duck. "Here I am." So the bunny and the duck were friends, and no one was ever alone again. And that is the story of Egg Book. And boys and girls, I have time enough now to share this bookmark with you. The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more you learn, the more places you'll go. And that is from Dr. Seuss. And boys and girls, I have a couple more bookmarks here that I can show you. And here it is, The Cat in the Hat, and he's saying, read. And here we have another bookmark, Keep Calm and Read On, Dr. Seuss. And so we all remember Dr. Seuss this month of March, but we'll be back next Saturday morning. Until then, this is Eleanor Hawkins saying bye-bye for Telestory time.